So Robin, what you're telling me is that Italy, the land of delicious bread, pasta, and pizza, is a good place to travel when you're gluten-free? Oh yeah. Last June, Colin and I got married and went to Italy for our honeymoon. But when I told friends and family that we were going to Italy, I had a lot of people say, aren't you going to have a hard time finding things that you can eat there? This is a huge misconception. Italy is actually an amazing place to visit if you have celiac disease. Today, I'll explain why. Not only that, I'm going to give you some of my top tips for planning your trip to Italy, and be sure to stick around until the end because I'll be filling you in on what I would do differently next time. Don't make my mistakes. I'll cover some of the highlights of our gluten-free honeymoon in Italy in this video, but be sure to stay tuned for my next series of videos where I'll share a more detailed look at our 12-day honeymoon in Italy. These videos will include Rome, Florence, Venice, and the Emilia-Romagna countryside. You'll see what we did and where we ate, so you can make notes for your next trip to Italy. First up, why Italy? In Italy, gluten-free options are everywhere. It's basically like celiac heaven. I've heard a lot of different opinions on why there are so many gluten-free options in Italy. Some people reference a study where they screened school-age children in Italy for celiac disease, and they found that 1.65% of the children had it, though 40% of them were undiagnosed. The Italian Celiac Association still states 1% of the population on their website though, which is in line with the global estimate. Regardless, whether it's due to effort from their Celiac Association, a general acceptance of the severity of the disease, or because the culture is so food-centered, the bottom line is that Italy is full of safe and delicious gluten-free options. Let's get into planning and preparing for a trip to Italy. If you take nothing else away from this video, my #1 tip is to download the AIC app. And no, this is not sponsored. The AIC app is the official app from the Italian Celiac Association. I was constantly using this tool throughout our entire trip, and it was incredible. Basically, restaurants, cafes, gelato shops, bakeries, and even hotels can become accredited with the AIC. If they have this accreditation, they will appear on the app. You can open up the app, look at the map view, and see all of the safe gluten-free options near you. Suddenly craving gelato and didn't scope out the area ahead of time? Just open up the app. As a bonus, every place we went to on this app was fantastic. It included a lot of hidden gems that I wouldn't have found otherwise, including many options that are not the top tourist spots. In a good way, because the last thing you want is to get stuck in a tourist trap. Pro tip: if this is your first time visiting Italy, wait until you're in the airport to actually activate your account. You can pay $5.99 for an introductory 2-week trial, so hold off as long as possible to ensure you have access for your whole trip. The other app you can use, but I honestly didn't even think of while I was there, is the Find Me Gluten-Free app. This app has a free version and a paid version, and in general, I recommend having the free version downloaded if you don't already, just for life. Having Find Me Gluten-Free is helpful if you find yourself in an area with fewer options on the AIC app. I wish I had thought to use this when we were in Venice, for example, because there weren't quite as many AIC accredited restaurants, and I wasn't completely sure which places that offered gluten-free would actually be good and safe. More on this later. Other than downloading those apps and obviously planning our itinerary, I didn't have to do much food-based planning. This was partially because we went on our trip a day after our wedding, so I was too busy to research. Shockingly, I didn't pack any snacks, and I was totally fine. I think I bought a bag of nuts in the airport, and I carried them with me the entire trip until the flight home because I never needed them. Usually, if I got hungry on the go, I had gelato. It doesn't hurt to have some protein bars just in case, but I didn't need them. The only meal I made sure to prepare for was breakfast. I've heard that it can be a little bit hard to find good breakfast options, and we wanted to be able to just get up and go in the morning rather than search for a breakfast spot. So I only booked hotels that had breakfast included, and I reached out to each hotel to confirm that they could accommodate gluten-free before confirming the booking. You could book an Airbnb and make your own breakfast, but since we had such limited time in each of the major cities, I didn't want the extra friction of grocery shopping. You can do a bit of research from videos, like this one, or gluten-free travel blogs, but I don't think you need to do as much as you would if you were traveling elsewhere. It's great to get ideas of places to try, but really not necessary for Italy because of the AIC app. Some of our favorite places we ate at were the hidden gems I found through the app as we walked in that area, rather than when we traveled across the city to try a place I read about in a blog. While we were on our travels, we encountered some pleasant surprises when it came to gluten-free options and protocols. If I haven't already convinced you to go to Italy, maybe these will. The most exciting thing that we discovered is that many of the AIC accredited restaurants we visited actually had not one, but 2 kitchens, a regular one and a dedicated gluten-free one. The food from the gluten-free kitchen always came out on a different colored plate or with a little flag in it so you knew it was gluten-free. The amazing part about this is that it means you can dine out with family and friends who aren't gluten-free without forcing them to come to only dedicated gluten-free spots with you. I have never felt more sure that my food is actually gluten-free. For the most part, Colin actually ordered off the gluten-free menu with me so that I could try all the different foods, because he's the best. But the gluten-free food was so good that I don't think he minded. In fact, on one occasion when he ordered a regular gluten pizza, he tried mine and actually preferred the gluten-free crust. So, just saying. Because there were 2 kitchens, some of the restaurants we went to said anything on the menu could be made gluten-free. In Canada, if you go to a restaurant and they're like, most of the menu can be made gluten-free, usually that means, well, yeah, we can make the burrito, but on a bed of lettuce. Or, yeah, the burger can be made gluten-free just without the bun and you can't get the fries, you have to get a salad. But in Italy, they actually meant everything could be made gluten-free. At one of the restaurants, I was drilling the server on it because I was in disbelief. The ravioli, gluten-free. The tortellini, gluten-free. The cream-filled pastry basket, gluten-free. Did I mention it's like celiac heaven? Even the non-gluten-free places usually had gluten-free options and were knowledgeable about what I could and couldn't have. Several of the gelato places we went to weren't dedicated gluten-free, but still had gluten-free cones and walked me through which flavors I could safely have. This was even the case in a small town. I was also surprised at how many restaurants had signs advertising gluten-free options as we walked by. For the most part, we stuck to the AIC restaurants, but I couldn't stop pointing out every time I saw another restaurant with gluten-free options. However, this is when the Find Me Gluten-Free app would be helpful to see if others had any experience with their food safety protocols. Though, honestly, I think a lot of them would be no less safe than eating at a non-dedicated restaurant in North America. The other thing I couldn't get over was that even the free snacks on the train had gluten-free options. In fact, I actually had one of the attendants apologize because they ran out of gluten-free sweet treats and only had gluten-free savory treats, like grissini, which were little breadsticks. I was shocked. That would literally never happen here. As if all of that wasn't enough, let's chat about some of the food-related highlights of the trip. I could also tell you the attraction highlights, but honestly, it was our first time there, so everything we did and saw was pretty incredible. Be sure to watch the follow-up series to see all the highlights and get all the nitty-gritty details. If you're planning a trip, get your pen and paper out. First up, Grom. Grom is a gelato chain that was in all the major cities we visited. It was even in some of the train stations. Everything is gluten-free at Grom, including the cones, so you don't have to ask. I was worried that because it was a chain, it wouldn't be great, like it would be the Dunkin' Donuts of gelato or something. But that was absolutely not the case. We loved it every time, especially the pistachio. Between Rome, Florence, and Venice, our very best meals were in Florence. We were wowed by the food of Florence. Like, we ate so much when we were there that we are basically full for the rest of the trip. My two favorite spots were, and I'm gonna butcher these names, but bear with me, Osteria il Desco and Lorenzo de Medici. In case you didn't guess, I very rarely tried to speak any Italian while I was there because I was so embarrassed, but Colin was just saying all the things.
Perfetto!
Grazie mille!
Grazie mille! Frizzante!
These are both AIC accredited restaurants, and we didn't plan to visit either of them. We just happened to walk by when we were in the area, and we loved them. After we exploded in Florence from eating too much. After we explored Rome, Florence, and Venice, we had a little countryside portion of the trip, and honestly, everything we had was incredible. We were in the Emilia-Romagna region near Bologna. According to the AIC website, it's one of the regions with the highest prevalence of celiac disease, which might explain why the options were so amazing. The small town artisanal gelato spot, Gusto Antico, was to die for. There was a local cheese producer where we got a bunch of fresh cheeses. The local AIC accredited restaurant had some of the best gluten-free pizza we had had on the trip, and maybe the best cheesecake I have ever eaten. And we did a wine tour at the Umberto Cesari winery. They did a full 7-course tasting menu that they made both vegetarian and gluten-free, and the wine was just incredible. If you're open to doing a bit more of a remote Italian vacation and willing to rent a car and drive, or force your husband to drive,
Thanks for torturing me!
I highly recommend it. More on this in the Emilia-Romagna video. We didn't really stumble across many gluten-free bakeries, except for, once again, gonna butcher this, but Le Altre Farine del Molino, which is a bakery in Rome near the Vatican. We almost didn't go here. I found it on the AIC app on our last day, and it was quite close to our hotel, so we walked over there on our last morning before flying home. They had so many amazing things, I wish I could have tried more. We got cannoli and croissants, and they were unreal.
Wow.
They were so unreal that I got a little box of goodies to take home with me on the plane, and because they were all baked goods, I was able to bring them back to Canada. When we got home, I ate them for breakfast with my coffee, and it was just magical. But it wasn't all sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. Don't get me wrong, we had an amazing vacation, but there were a few things I wish I knew before we went, and a few mistakes I made. First, and in my opinion, most important, don't use Google to find gluten-free restaurants. Use the AIC app or use Find Me Gluten-Free. The only things we had that weren't great were places that I found on Google. I found this restaurant in Venice on Google that said that they had gluten-free options, and they had like 5,000 ratings, so I figured it must be good. But it led us right into one of those tourist trap restaurants that they tell you about. Long wait to get in, rushed service, the gluten-free options were not fresh, the pasta was definitely from frozen, and the bread and desserts came in bags. Not to mention, it was also the most expensive meal of our entire trip. Don't make my mistake, don't use Google. Avoid choosing restaurants spontaneously without checking the AIC app first. We were walking to one of the AIC recommended restaurants, but found something else on the way and figured, hey, it's a sign, they have gluten-free options. Let's try it. Unfortunately, it was not a great meal, and I still think about what the restaurant we intended to go to would have been like. Be aware of the AIC statement on gluten-free beer. I had 2 gluten-free beers in Italy, a Peroni and another craft orzo beer, both made from gluten grains with gluten removed, which is a no-no here in Canada. But I figured I would try it in case it was different in Italy. I had no reaction from the Peroni, but I did get a little jabby-stabby from the second beer.
Jabby-stabby, ooh, 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 jabby-stabby.
Just the one.
Okay.
So I looked up the AIC statement on gluten-removed beer, and it falls under the foods at risk, possible risk of gluten category. The AIC doesn't say to avoid them if they're marked gluten-free, but just be wary. It's also important to note that I only seemed to have a reaction for like an hour or two, so it's possible that it was just something else I ate. We had a lot of creamy stuff. I don't seem to have a problem with lactose, but like that was the day in Florence we ate a lot. We ate so much. This is an important one. Adjust your expectations. I heard a lot of gluten-free content creators talk about how everything they had in Italy was so amazing and only had good things to say about everything that they ate. Heck, even I said that Italy is like celiac heaven. Overall, traveling to Italy was a dream as someone with celiac because I always felt I had safe things I could eat, but not everything was amazing. Based on what I heard, I was expecting piles and piles of freshly baked gluten-free bread and croissants everywhere I went. But this is simply not the case. In reality, you can find gluten-free options everywhere, but it's usually packaged products, which are nothing to write home about. I never went hungry or had to worry about eating safely, which was awesome, but you do need to seek out the good stuff. On that note, I wish I brought my toaster bags. Because I had this expectation that freshly baked gluten-free bread would be abundant, I didn't pack my toaster bags. And while the packaged bread wasn't as dry as what it's like here in Canada, I did wish that I could have toasted it. Don't leave home without your toaster bags. This is not really a gluten-free specific thing, but just good to know in general. Italians eat on a different schedule. A lot of restaurants close after lunch service around 2 p.m., sometimes 3 p.m., and don't reopen until 7 or 8. If you're like me and prefer dinner around 5:30 or 6, prepare yourself for that. We ended up eating at really weird times of the day, which limited which restaurants were open. I know I already mentioned it, but don't forget to check the Find Me Gluten-Free app. For some of the places where there were fewer options on the AIC app, like Venice, I didn't even think about checking the Find Me Gluten-Free app until after I got back from the trip. I actually looked up one of the places where we got a gluten-free pizza from a shared kitchen, and some people had bad experiences with cross-contact there. Thankfully, I was fine. And honestly, it's probably not much more risky than eating from a non-dedicated pizza place here in Canada. I wish I had thought to use it to check though. Despite these things, it really didn't affect my enjoyment of the trip overall. Like I said, I have never felt more safe eating outside of my home than when I was in Italy. Stay tuned for the next few videos where you'll get a closer look at our magical 12-day honeymoon in Italy. The reason I wanted to really break it down for you in detail is because when I was doing research on restaurants and places to visit in Italy, I didn't find that people were giving a full review of the places that they went. The trip isn't just about the food. Shocking, I know. And I wanted to know what people were doing before and after their restaurant visit. I want to give you an idea of the attractions nearby so you can decide if it's worth adding them to your bucket list. And now I want to hear from you. If you've been to Italy, drop your favorite gluten-free spots in the comments so I can go next time. Because we're gonna go again soon, right? If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. As Italians and Gabe in the office would say, ciao.